Hello everyone and welcome back to the Ryan Retro channel! In today's video we're going to be testing out AAA Android games, and the background here is a little bit of a hint about what's to come. So swiping up, let's go through some of our games. Let's jump straight into Honkai Star Rail. You'll see right away that I've assigned some of the buttons on the screen because as I can tell there's no way to actually use a controller natively, which is a shame. We're also going to run through some of the settings and see how high we can push up the graphics in this video and maintain a good frame rate. So why not start with very high and just see how that goes? And I'm looking for some kind of controller support and I'm not finding it in this game. I've also set the controller style to Xbox, as that's the most likely to be recognized in an Android game. A lot of the games we're testing in this video, to me they all seem like they're the same game. I'm sure they're made by the same company because the intro and loading screens are identical. These are some of the most popular games on Android these days, which is why I'm testing them, but I think they're pretty much all the same game. You can see we're getting some real frame drops down to 15 frames per second here. I've assigned some buttons to the different moves. Every time we attack, we're dropping to around 15 frames per second. So what I'll do after this is lower the graphics down to the minimum and see what the highest frame rate we can get is. It does look great. This is on the highest graphics setting. It looks beautiful on the OLED screen. But 15 frames per second is not exactly ideal. Let's use our ultimate ability. Of all the games in today's tests, I think Honkai Star Rail probably is the coolest one, and I can see why it's a very popular game. To make the game look a bit better, I'm going to make all of the buttons I've assigned invisible by choosing the hexagon icon and then dragging this transparency down to 0. So the buttons are all still there and still functioning, but we don't see them. So it's a nicer viewing experience. So we can run around, we can move the camera. I've shown how to do this in previous videos, but it's pretty simple to set up. This game's got some nice voice acting. I find with these styles of games, you never know whether you're going to get voice acting or not. Some of them look like they're going to give you voice acting, and you're just met with silence. So this one does have voice acting.
Help me investigate the terminal in this room. Our item might be inside.
The game looks incredible. It's so sharp and vivid. It's hard to believe this is a phone game. I feel like phone games have come so far in the past few years. Just a few years ago, you wouldn't be able to get quality like this outside of something like a PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4. It's really impressive. And we are mostly sitting solid at 30 frames per second. It's only when those animations happen that we drop down to 15. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the graphics down to the minimum and see if we can maintain 30 frames per second even in the battles. I think to change the graphics I need to quit and relaunch the game, so let's try that now. I just realized there's a frames per second option in the menu as well, but I think if we were dropping down to 15 frames per second, I'm not very hopeful about our frames per second on high mode. So now I've set the graphics to very low, and I'm going to set the frames per second to 60, and let's see if we can hold tight at 60. So now jumping into the game with 60 frames per second on very low settings. Honestly, it still looks nice. It's a bit more rough around the edges. It's not quite as crispy as it was before, but unless you're sticking your face right up to the game, it still looks great. So let's try and quickly progress through the story and get into another battle, because I'm really curious what our frame rate will be during those attack animations. On the very high graphics settings, we fell down to 15 frames per second, so I'm curious what we can do on the very low graphics settings. Rihanna Retro has joined the team. So now let's see what happens when we jump into battle and try and fight. So let's watch the FPS counter as I attack now. That time it dipped to only 56 frames per second. That's good. That's much better than before. The frame rate's not really dipping this time. Oh, there we dropped to 44 frames per second. And you might notice in every video when I talk about a frame rate not dipping or being solid, it immediately dips every time. It seems to depend what kind of move you do. The bow and arrow moves are fine, but some moves seem to use more power. Let's use our ultimate ability if we can. Go Rihanna Retro! Hit them with the subscription stick! Make them subscribe to the channel! Beautiful. So I would say for me, I prefer playing on these lower graphic settings. And now that we've seen we can mostly stick around 60 frames per second when using the very low settings, I think we could tweak this a little bit, turn it up a bit and still get 60 frames per second on maybe a medium graphic setting. So if you want to play this game, feel free to tweak the graphic settings. Make sure to turn on that 60 frames per second mode. And I'm sure you can get a nice compromise between quality and performance. For me personally, this very low graphics setting already looks very nice. The only place you really notice the lower quality is in the character's hair, which to me is not a big deal. But if you did care about that, you could bump up the quality just a little bit and see how it goes. Or just put up with the 15 frames per second in attack animations, because it's perfectly smooth for the rest of the game. Running around, hitting my baseball bat around, it's super smooth. So this game was very impressive. We did need to map all the controls to the screen. So now let's jump into another similar game and see how that goes. Let's jump into another game that by the icon looks exactly the same, Zenless Zone Zero. For Zenless Zone Zero, we've got the image quality on low, the rendering on medium, and pretty much all low settings. We can once again change the FPS to 60, but when I do that, it warns me the settings are too high and might cause my device to overheat. We do of course have the fan in the Retroid Pocket 5. I never personally use it, but if we do start to overheat, I will turn it on. So let's keep all these settings that we have. Maybe we can even turn the rendering down to low, just to see if we can get a solid 60, and then we can play around with raising the settings. You might see on the screen that I did add custom buttons, but I'm seeing here we actually have a controller option. So by turning that on, yes, it does actually work with a controller. So I can get rid of all these key mappings I made. So I'm going to push that eraser button, get rid of the key mappings, and we do in fact have controller support. You can see the A button lights up to show we can push the A button to play the game. So let's jump in and see what it's like with full controller support. It blows my mind that we can play these games on Android devices now, with full controller support right off the bat. It's incredible. One thing I'm liking about this game is you can skip all the cutscenes. This is running beautifully. It feels so smooth. Controller support is working beautifully. We can move around, we can move the screen. It feels like I'm playing a game on a console. You can slide around like the new Call of Duty games. You switch out characters. I played this game for about 10 minutes before recording this video just to check everything was working and to give my review on this. A little quick review because we're still in the beginning levels. And I didn't realize back then that it had controller support. I thought we had to use... Oh, this is so cool. I thought we had to use the touchscreen. So I was running around using the touchscreen. I mapped it to the controls, but you know, mapping the controls are... While it works quite well, it's not as good as native support like this. It's a bit finicky. So I was running around with the controller support, and I was going to say that I was quite disappointed by this game, because the cutscenes are really cool, but then when you jump into the actual game, it wasn't that good. Oh wow, this is incredible. It wasn't that good when I just kind of made some finicky controls on the screen, but you might be able to tell from the fact I can't finish a sentence that I think this is awesome now. This native controller support has really changed things. This might be one of the coolest games I've played this year. I don't think I've ever felt so cool in a game. I've had a few requests to show this game in my videos, and you know what? I get it now. I understand. That was very cool, and it works perfectly. So now what we can do is we can try bumping up the graphics and just see how it goes, because that was a very smooth 60. So let's just throw everything on maximum and see if we can bring this thing to its knees. It seems we have some kind of boss battle. What better time to get a smooth 3 frames per second? So we can tab over to graphics, and it seems like we don't have to relaunch the game to change the graphics, which is great. So let's go to high graphics. Let's put everything on maximum. We're getting warnings every time we do it. Ultra settings. My reasoning is the lowest graphics settings work perfectly. So I'm now going to put the absolute maximum settings on, which I'm sure are not going to be good at all, but then you can try and get an idea of maybe where in the middle you can put the settings. I don't have time to go through every single setting one by one all day long, so if this brings it down to about 3 frames per second, maybe keep the graphics quite low. If it only brings it down to around 40 frames per second, you could probably put the graphics at least on medium. So let's just see how it goes because I'm curious. So now everything's really high. We still have 60 frames per second. And honestly, it doesn't look much different. I'm not sure if the graphics settings really work. Maybe I need to restart the game. But I will say, even when the graphics are on very low, it looked great. Let's go. This game is awesome. It's like Elden Ring. Maybe it doesn't have quite the difficulty curve of Elden Ring, but I mean it's like Elden Ring just in the way these monsters seem to have movesets. And they seem to trigger cutscenes like in Elden Ring, the way they're changing. This game, absolutely epic. The graphics settings don't seem to make a difference, which makes me wonder if I'm doing something wrong, like maybe I need to restart the game to apply the settings. But this definitely looks like high graphics settings. It looks beautiful. So if you'd like to play Zenless Zone Zero on your Retroid Pocket 5, it is a beautiful experience, and the native controller support is amazing. So now let's jump into another game that also has native controller support. Our next game is Wuthering Waves. When we jump into the game and move the controller, we get this pop-up notification letting us know that they've detected a controller. Would you like to switch to controller mode? Yes, please. And just like that, as smooth as that, we are straight into controller mode. I haven't played this game yet, I'm just in the very beginning. It looks good, but it does look a little bit laggy compared to the other ones we've played. So our graphics quality is on the highest, and it says our current setup load is stuck, which doesn't sound ideal. And as I've already seen a few frame dips, let's put it all the way down to the bottom and see how that goes. We'll put it all the way down. You might tell I'm very much all or nothing with these tests, so let's go all the way down to Ultra Performance. Our setup load is now smooth. We have a nice green bar. Once again, let's enable 60 frames per second, please. That puts us straight back into stuck again. But let's just see how it goes. And yes, we are up to 59 frames per second. It looks pretty smooth. The graphics look a lot worse on this game. The other games, I didn't notice much of a difference by lowering the graphics, but this is very noticeably worse. Look at the grass here, and I'm going to once again turn up the settings. You'll now see a huge difference in the shading, the difference in lighting as we look around. It looks completely different, although we now are stuck at 30 frames per second, even though I have enabled 60. Going back into the settings, even though I enabled 60 before, it's dropped us down to 30 when I upped the quality. And if I try and go up to 40, it actually says the device performance is overloaded, and it might lead to serious overheating. Please adjust your graphics settings or enable Auto FPS. So let's try Auto FPS and see what happens. And then I'll just try and manually push it up to 60 anyway. So it looks like we are getting 59 frames per second. And of course, again, if we are overheating, we do have a fan on the back. So let's just turn that fan on now, because it is starting to get a little bit warm. For all of my tests on my channel, I always run the games in standard performance with the fan off. That's just the way I like to play the games. I don't like to have the fan sound because it's quite high-pitched and whiny. But what I'll do is I'll put up to performance mode and put the fan on quiet, and I'm not feeling any air coming through. But it might help if we get into more demanding scenes or if something crazy happens. I now also have this green outline around my screen, which I don't remember seeing before. Anyway, let's move on through the game and see what happens. We are around 53, 54 frames per second. To me, that's okay. I can pick up a lizard. Oh, we have some evil jellyfish. The buttons in this game, pushing X or Y on the Retroid Pocket case to attack, it reminds me of Little Prince Boy, Exhale of the Crazy. You can see the graphics are dropping to 40 frames per second. Now, I'm going to be honest, I didn't feel the graphics drop. To me, it still feels very smooth. It's only when I looked up there I saw the graphics had dropped, because if I wasn't looking at this, it feels very smooth. So we want to try and get a locked on 60. So maybe let's lower the graphics down to a medium setting. We'll keep it balanced, medium. We even get a little thumbs up. You can't beat that. I think it's saying you should like the video, and I agree. So let's try and get 60 frames per second with a medium resolution. Having native controller support is so nice, just to be able to do anything like hide the UI, autoplay or skip, without having to go around touching all areas of the screen. Story skip may hinder your understanding of the story. Don't care, mate. I don't know what any of the buttons are except attack, but they seem to nicely be standing next to each other for me. Whoa!
Rover, watch out!
Once again, this game is very cool. These games remind me of Sword Art Online, if anyone's seen that, the way that we switch in and out. If you're watching this video, you've got your eyes fixed on the frames per second counter, you probably think this is not a very good experience because you're watching it jump from 44 to 56 to 40 to all over the place, right? But I have to tell you from real experience of playing this game, I would not be able to tell you this is not 60 frames per second. Everything feels so fluid when I move around. I'm not sure if that's because my eyes are bad or just because I'm focusing on playing, I'm not just watching a video. I do think when you're just watching a video and not playing, you can notice frame dips more. When you're actually focused on playing the game, it's not as noticeable. And this feels very smooth. I would be very happy to play this whole game with this setup. So let's have a look at the settings we're using. We're using custom settings. I just put it onto medium and the frame rate on 60. Everything else is on medium. You can go down and find a lot more settings to tweak, but so far everything on medium, frames per second on 60. I'm really liking this. It does say we're overloaded and recommends using the fan. It is a little bit warm, so if you want to, you might want to turn the fan up a little bit more. Maybe put the performance on high performance. But I would say, if you hear this is sport mode. Never use sport mode, it sounds awful, unless you're wearing earphones. So maybe turn it down to smart mode, or even customize your own fan profile if you'd like. There is a customize option that I've never really used before, but even on the minimum, it's still noisy. So I'd suggest using smart, because that's quite quiet. So yes, if you want to play Wuthering Waves on this game, it looks like it runs really well. These kinds of games, they all remind me of Genshin Impact, but I see why they're popular, because the whole world, as you look around, just looks beautiful. And I keep repeating myself, but it's so hard to even believe this is a phone game. This is unreal.
That was close.
We are living in a golden age for gaming, where we can get this like $200 little handheld, or even just use the phone you have, and just play a smooth, beautiful looking game like this in your pocket. So this game is running beautifully. You will have noticed some frame dips, but I didn't notice them at all. And if you try this for yourself, I think you'll agree that without the frames per second counter there, it feels incredibly smooth. So let's now jump into a different kind of game now and see how that goes. The next game I wanted to show you was Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, but unfortunately they've stopped making the game and started making a new version, and you have to buy it for $10. So if you want to pay $9.99 for the new Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, then feel free. I'm not going to do that yet. I probably will do it in the future because I love Animal Crossing, but that's not going to be today. So instead, let's jump into another game that uses this vertical format and see how that runs. So instead, let's jump into the Pokemon trading card game. I only found out this game existed a few days ago, and I think this is extremely dangerous for my wallet. All I can think is, thank God I'm not a kid, and thank God I don't have a kid, because this is just built to drain your bank account. I think we all remember the thrill of opening a Pokemon pack, or a Yu-Gi-Oh card pack, or even a Panini sticker pack or something like that. It's such a dopamine hit, and they have made it perfectly into this game. So for anyone who doesn't know, you are going to have to play it vertically like this, which is not ideal on the Retroid Pocket 5 because it means your hand is right over the fan. And even with the fan turned off, you're going to feel some heat exhausting out the back onto your hand, so it's not ideal. There is of course no controller support at all. We can try to force landscape like this, but then you're just going to get these huge black bars on the side and a tiny screen, so I wouldn't recommend that for a vertical app like this. I'd recommend turning force landscape off, which is then going to do this, which is even worse. So you will need to close the app and open it again. So let's choose a pack we want to open. I'm going to go for the classic Charizard pack. And the app is so simple, but genius. You pick what pack you want. Oh, some of them are turned around the wrong way, it seems. We can flip those around. It is so satisfying. I will grab this one. And then you have to cut it open. So you have to go like this. I'm going to turn the volume all the way up. And it follows the way your finger moves, like you're really opening it. Whoa, I got a good one straight away. Like a real pack, you usually get the good ones at the back of the pack. So I got this Starmie. Let's see what else I got. Sizzlipede. Clobopus. Fearow. Greninja. So Greninja is the usual good one you get at the back, but I got two good ones. So what we can do now is go next, and this will add it to our collection. Swipe up to register them to the card decks. So again, it's all input. You need to swipe up like that and send them to your Pokedex. And then what you can do is just look at your cards, which to someone who's not into Pokemon cards probably sounds ridiculous that you're just opening card packs and then looking at the cards, but it is exhilarating. So yesterday I got this Venusaur, and it's 3D, and it's really like collecting real cards. Like here I have a Korean Red Eyes Black Dragon, and you can see when you move it around, it has a kind of rainbow effect that's so nice to look at. This is, of course, the Red Eyes Black Dragon, or in Korean, 붉은 눈이 흑룡. And there's just something so nice about collecting these shiny cards, and they've replicated this beautifully in the game, because in the game, you can move it around like this and see the way it shines. Look at the details in the eyes. If you watch the eyes, you'll see the color change and sparkle. It is incredible. For anyone who grew up with these cards like me and so many other kids, even my Korean students now, who are 5 years old, are obsessed with Pokemon cards. This is absolute genius. We now have to wait 12 hours to open another pack, but of course, if you just give them a little bit of money, you can open another one. This app is designed to just make kids bug their parents for money, and you know what? I respect it. It's such an obvious cash grab. They're not even trying to hide it. But this is just, if you've not tried this game yet, try it out. But don't blame me if you end up emptying your bank account. I've managed to not spend a penny on this yet, and I won't, but it's very tempting. On the topic of games that my students play, let's jump into Roblox. This is a game that I've never played in my life. We are going to need to once again force landscape mode, and I would suggest when using the Retroid Pocket 5, keep this force landscape mode on at all times, unless you specifically want to do something in this portrait mode. So let's relaunch the app with force landscape turned on. It'll now fill the screen perfectly because Roblox is set up to fill the screen perfectly and has controller support natively, so that's great. I made my name Ryan Retro 4877 because that's how many subscribers I had when I started this video. And I've never played Roblox, but I do know what it's about. I think people make their own little games in here, right? And you can just play lots of mini games essentially. So let's look at Pets Go Naughty versus Nice. Why not? Festive. I have a student in my class who's obsessed with this game and she uses it to answer all of the English questions. So for example, our vocabulary word was rare, and I asked, do you know what rare means? She said, yeah, like a rare skin in Roblox. Rare, epic, and legendary. So you know, Roblox gets a bad name, but it can be educational. Okay, roll. Tap X to open. I seem to be opening an egg. Okay, so I have some kind of box puppy. Oh, hello. I have a Dalmatian. Well, this is cute. You can see the frames per second are locked at 60. Before filming this video, I did try two little mini games. One of them was a race, and it was a solid 60. One of them was a very popular game about fishing, and for some reason that game just kept going from 60 down to around 5 frames per second all the time. If I looked around like this, it would just completely drop to around 5 FPS. So I think it might depend what game you're playing this time, but I'm sure most games will run well. Let's roll another dice. It seems like we just keep rolling animals. Oh, I got a 1 in 1,900 prison cat. Okay, I'll take that. I'm not sure if there's much more to this game than just rolling animals. I got a goldfish. Let's go, team! These are my new subscribers. So I'm probably not going to play much more of this. Let's just jump into another mini game and see if the performance is okay. Because I'm not really sure the point of any of these games. I don't think they really have a point. I think the whole point of Roblox is just to keep your children busy for a little while, and I'm sure it would do that. You can see I tried a few of these games. I tried Collect All Pets, that was fine. YouTube Race Simulator, that was fine. And this fish game, that one was really laggy. So let's try Eat the World, why not? So here we are on top of a Lego pyramid. It looks very smooth. Let's just check out what our settings are. I think I set them pretty low. The graphics quality I put all the way to the bottom. So let's now try putting it all the way to the top and see how many frames we lose. So it's now all the way at the top. It definitely looks sharper. And we're still at 60 frames per second. Battle Zone 4 minutes. It seems like this is some kind of Fortnite or PUBG style game. This game is very cute with the Lego style. And for anyone who now has a Retroid Pocket 5, I think you'll be able to testify to this, that almost any game just looks so great with an OLED screen. I really think I can't go back to a non-OLED screen now. I've actually been thinking about replacing my Switch with an OLED Switch and replacing my Steam Deck with an OLED Steam Deck. This screen is just ruining other screens for me. I'm not really sure what I'm doing right now, but what I can say is changing the graphics settings changed absolutely nothing in terms of performance. And I can't remember if it was this game or another one again, but quite a few games today warned me that the Retroid Pocket 5 is not going to be able to support high graphics. They warned me that I should lower the graphics right down, which I think is really strange, because we're clearly running everything very well, and we know the Retroid Pocket 5 is powerful enough to emulate even secret console games. So it should have no problems with most Android games. So I'm not quite sure why that is, whether the built-in fan is helping us out and the 8GB of RAM. I can't be sure, but one thing is for sure, the performance is actually great. So I'm not sure many people watching this video will want to play Roblox, but I have had a few requests for it, and I was curious to try it as it's very popular in my classroom. So Roblox definitely seems very playable at 60 frames per second, and I know a few people in my Discord have children who they might be sharing their Retroid Pocket 5 with, or even giving to as a gift, and I'm sure they would really enjoy this Roblox experience on the Retroid Pocket 5. Oh, hello, Urza Dorothy 02. She's huge! Is this some kind of Attack on Titan game? Because she is eating the world. Maybe the Titans are going to eat the world and I have to just survive. Oh dear. I'm scared, so let's jump into a different game. Our next game today looks quite similar to a lot of the other ones we played today, and it's what this background is. It is Infinity Nikki, and I have seen warnings on Reddit that if you start this game, you're about to lose a lot of hours in your life, because they say there is a lot of things to do in this game. It's never ending, and it's visually very, very nice too. So the first thing we'll do is see if we can get controller support, and see if we can get 60 frames per second set up, and let's see how it runs. As we load into the game, it spends some time compiling shaders, and this is something I think a lot of us wish we could do in a lot of emulation systems. I wish we could compile all of the shaders for the game before we launch into secret console games, for example, to eliminate any stutters. The game took a really long time to load that shader cache, and now that it did, I opened the settings and we were left with a long black screen. So let's see if we can get into the settings. Again, we have graphics settings, so the first thing I want to do is see if we can change it to 60 frames per second. I'm not seeing any frames per second setting in this game at the moment. As you can see, we are using controller support. When you open the game, it probably will be set to touch support, which you can just change in here, no problems. Let's change our graphics preset to custom. We're going to set everything to high, and again, we get warnings that we might lag. But I just want to see how good this game can look. I'm not sure if it's just the style of the game, but the dress around the character looks quite choppy compared to the other games we've played. It doesn't look like high graphics settings. The render quality is grayed out, and no matter what I do about the graphics preset, I cannot change that setting, which is very interesting. And as far as I can tell, there is no 60 frames per second option. So it seems this game is a 30 frames per second game. Let's run around and see how well it runs. Let's see if we can maintain that 30 frames per second with all the graphics set very high. The game's really similar to one that I was playing earlier in this video. Even the tooltips that jump up are the same. Even the way that it shows down here, the ping is exactly the same. It's clearly made by the same people. I cannot tell you which game that is because honestly, the games in this video are all blending into one to me. I have a floating outfit that just completely changed. The game's mostly running pretty smooth. It is occasionally dipping to around 28 frames per second, it seems like. And this one actually does feel less smooth. I mentioned in one of the games earlier that even though we were dipping from 60 down to around 44 frames per second, it still felt really smooth. This one doesn't feel as smooth. I am noticing the difference between 30 frames per second and 24. I feel like this game is made for anyone growing up with a Barbie doll who wants to play a kind of Barbie doll game. Because every time you do anything, you change outfit. You can almost think of the face buttons as outfit buttons. As you jump, you wear a blue outfit. As you purify something, you change to white and green. It's very interesting. Goodbye. Falling off a cliff into the abyss will cause you to faint. Oh yeah, that's what I did. I fainted. Okay, that's what they call it. Falling into deep water will also make you faint. I feel like these are bad lessons for children. Don't jump off a cliff, you might faint for a while. Anyway, this game is clearly very cute. I feel like I don't need to get much further into it. You get the idea. It's the same as all the games I've played in this video so far. I think out of all the games I've played in this video so far, you can just choose the aesthetic that you like. Some of them seem quite 80s style, some of them are quite futuristic. This one's clearly gone for a very cute style. They all control very similarly. They have similar UIs, they have similar buttons, everything's very similar. I might try and play this game a little bit more later off screen because I have heard people say that it's really, really addictive once you get into it. But I think for now, you get the idea. As far as I can tell, there's no 60 frames per second option. If there is and I'm just blind, please let me know in the comments below. And I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, please give me a like. Please subscribe if you didn't already, and if you'd like to buy your own Retroid Pocket 5 so that you can play all of these games, then pick up your own one from my affiliate link. It'll take you to the official Retroid website, the best place to buy one of these. And if you'd like to chat with me, why not jump into my Discord, which is also in the description. We already have more than 400 members in just a few days, which is incredible. Thank you once again for watching, everyone, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.